Rachel checked the email again. Promotion list. Her name was there. After 2 years. Late nights. Extra work. Silence. She finally made it. Mr. Kane wants to see you. Her smile faded. Just a little. Everyone said the same thing. If you get called after the list. It's not just a meeting. Rachel walked toward his office. Heart steady. Mind racing. She knocked. Come in. Victor Kane didn't look up. Not at first. Then slowly. He closed the file. Looked at her. And said, "Congratulations, you earned it." Pause. Now let's talk about what comes next. And in that moment, Rachel understood why no one celebrated promotions here. Rachel Adams had spent the last 2 years doing everything right, or at least everything she believed was right, showing up early, staying late, taking on work that wasn't even assigned to her, proving herself again and again in a system that rarely acknowledged effort openly. Because in the bank where she worked, recognition didn't come with praise, it came with quiet decisions made behind closed doors. And everyone knew that if your name appeared on that internal promotion list, it meant something had shifted, something bigger than just performance. When Rachel first joined, she thought it was just another competitive corporate environment, structured, demanding, but fair. Over time she started noticing patterns, small things at first, employees who suddenly advanced faster than others, people who stopped talking about their work and started avoiding certain conversations entirely. The way some colleagues would go silent whenever the senior manager's name came up, like there was an understanding that didn't need to be spoken. She ignored it in the beginning, focusing only on her work, because that was the one thing she could control, and she believed that consistency would eventually pay off, and it did, at least on the surface. The day she saw her name on the promotion list felt like validation, proof that everything she had done mattered, but that feeling didn't last as long as she expected. Because almost immediately after the announcement, something else followed, the message that changed the tone completely, a short notification asking her to meet Victor Kane, the senior manager who rarely called anyone directly unless it was important or personal, and as she stood up from her desk, holding her file, she couldn't ignore the subtle shift in the office around her, the way conversations lowered, the way one of her colleagues briefly looked at her and then quickly looked away. Like there was something she wasn't being told, something she was about to find out on her own, and as Rachel walked toward his office, every step felt heavier, not because she doubted her work, but because deep down, something told her this meeting wasn't just about a promotion, it was about something else entirely. Rachel stepped into Victor Kane's office with controlled composure, the kind she had trained herself to maintain no matter how intense the situation became. The office itself was larger than expected, dimly lit with warm tones, glass walls partially covered, creating a sense of privacy that felt intentional rather than comfortable. Victor was seated behind his desk, reviewing a file, not looking at her immediately, letting the silence stretch just long enough to establish control over the room. Rachel stood there for a second before he gestured toward the chair, a small motion, but one that carried authority. She sat down, placing her file neatly on her lap, waiting for the conversation to begin. This was supposed to be a moment of recognition, a step forward, but something in the atmosphere made it feel different, heavier, like there was more beneath the surface. Victor finally looked up, his expression calm, almost neutral, but his eyes sharp, observant, the kind of gaze that didn't miss reactions. "You've done good work," he said, his tone measured, not warm, not cold, just controlled. Rachel nodded slightly, offering a professional thank you, expecting him to move into formalities, role expectations, responsibilities, but instead he leaned back slightly, studying her again, as if evaluating something beyond her performance. "Not everyone makes it this far," he continued, his voice lower now, slower. "It takes more than just skill," and there it was, that shift, subtle but clear. Rachel felt it immediately, the conversation moving away from the safe, expected path into something undefined, something that required careful navigation. She kept her expression steady, choosing not to react too quickly, giving him space to clarify, but he didn't clarify, not directly. Instead he let the silence do the work, letting the weight of his words settle in the room, making her aware that this wasn't just about her promotion anymore. "You understand how things work here, right?" he asked, not as a question, But as a statement, Rachel hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough for him to notice, but not enough to lose control. She responded carefully, saying she believed performance and consistency were what mattered. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't the answer he was looking for, and his slight smile confirmed it, not mocking, not aggressive, just knowing, like he had heard that response before, many times, and it always led to the same place. The room felt quieter now, the kind of silence that presses on you, forcing you to think faster, to respond carefully, because every word matters, and Rachel realized that this meeting wasn't about confirming her promotion, it was about defining the terms behind it, terms that had never been written down, but were clearly understood by those who had been in this room before her. Rachel felt the shift fully now, the realization settling in not as a sudden shock, but as a slow, heavy understanding that everything she had observed over the past 2 years wasn't coincidence, it was a pattern, one she had chosen not to see clearly until now, because seeing it meant accepting something she wasn't ready to face. Victor leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the desk, his tone still calm, almost conversational, but carrying a weight that made it impossible to ignore. "Opportunities here come with expectations," he said. Pausing just long enough to let the sentence sink in, Rachel didn't respond immediately, not because she didn't understand, but because she needed a moment to decide how to respond without losing control of herself or the situation. Her mind raced through possibilities, trying to find a version of this conversation that stayed professional, that stayed within the boundaries she believed in. But every path seemed to lead back to the same place, the same unspoken condition, and the worst part wasn't just what was being implied, it was how normal it seemed to him, how routine, like this wasn't a line being crossed, it was just part of the system, something accepted, something expected. She thought about her colleagues, the ones who had been promoted before her, the ones who stopped talking about their success, the ones who avoided eye contact when certain topics came up. And suddenly it all made sense in a way that felt uncomfortable, almost suffocating, because it meant that what she was experiencing right now wasn't an exception, it was the rule, and that realization changed everything, because now this wasn't just about one decision, it was about the kind of environment she was stepping into, the kind of future she was choosing. Victor watched her carefully, reading the silence, measuring her reaction, waiting for the moment she would either accept, question, or walk away, and in that moment, Rachel understood that whatever she said next would define not just her career in this bank, but the version of herself she would carry forward from this point on. Rachel took a slow breath, grounding herself in the only thing she could control in that moment, her choice, because everything else, the environment, the expectations, the pressure, had already been set long before she walked into that room. She looked at Victor, not as a superior, not as someone holding power over her, but as a man presenting a condition, one that she had the right to accept or refuse, and for a brief second, the thought crossed her mind, the easy path, the one that would secure her position, guarantee her promotion, validate her years of effort. But it didn't feel like success, it felt like something else, something she wouldn't be able to justify to herself later. Her grip tightened slightly on the file in her lap, a small reminder of everything she had worked for, everything she believed had brought her here, and she realized that if she compromised that belief now, then none of it meant what she thought it did. It would all become part of something she never agreed to. And that realization made her decision clearer than anything else. She straightened slightly in her chair, her voice calm but firm as she spoke, choosing her words carefully but without hesitation. She said she valued the opportunity and the work she had done, but she believed her performance should be enough, that she wasn't willing to define her career based on anything outside of that. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Not controlling, but shifting. Victor's expression changed just slightly, not dramatically, but enough to show that this wasn't the response he expected, that she had stepped outside the pattern he was used to, and that small shift, that moment where control slipped even slightly, told Rachel everything she needed to know. She stood up, steady, composed, not waiting for his reaction, because she already understood the outcome, and as she turned toward the door, she felt something change inside her, not relief, not yet, but clarity, the kind that comes when you make a decision that defines you, even if it costs you something. Rachel walked out of the office and back into the open floor, the same space that had felt familiar just minutes ago now carrying a completely different weight. The conversations, the movements, the silence, everything looked the same, but she saw it differently now, because she understood what existed beneath it. As she returned to her desk, she noticed a colleague glance at her briefly, as if trying to read the outcome without asking. And Rachel realized that this moment, this quiet return, was part of the pattern too, the unspoken communication that replaced words in an environment like this. She sat down, placing her file on the desk, her mind replaying everything that had just happened, not with regret, but with clarity. Because while she may have just walked away from a promotion, she hadn't lost what she came there with, her skill, her effort, her self-respect, and that realization grounded her in a way she didn't expect. She looked around one last time, not with fear, but with understanding, because now she knew exactly what this place was, and more importantly, what it wasn't. And as she powered down her system, making a decision that felt bigger than just leaving for the day, she understood that sometimes the strongest move isn't staying and adapting, it's recognizing when something doesn't align with who you are and choosing to walk away. And as she stood up, stepping out of the space that once felt like her future, she wasn't walking away from success, she was redefining it on her own terms.